Okay, so this is episode 2 of the Business Casual podcast. I'd like to welcome our guest to today's episode. Our guest is a savvy real estate investor as well as a realtor in our local market, a facilitator for the Humber College Real Estate Program, a short and long-term rental provider, and most importantly, a father to 2 beautiful kids, Austin and Brooks. Our guest began his real estate journey by purchasing bungalows and converting them into legal 2-unit duplexes, and through this really focused his business on helping other investors do the same. Our guest has successfully flipped multiple properties in our marketplace and recently has expanded his portfolio to purchasing Air BnB properties in Florida. One of Durham's most informative people when it comes to investing in real estate, our friend and guest, Cassidy. Thanks for coming, buddy.
Yeah, welcome to the
Thanks
show.
for having me, guys. Loving the podcast so far and happy to be one of the early guests.
Yeah.
And
Most interesting guest too. We're excited to have you on. You're probably one of the most diversified real estate investors, dabbling in kind of all aspects of real estate investing. So start from the start. Where did you begin in life before real estate to kind of where you are now?
Yeah, no, it's interesting hearing you saying that because I didn't start off thinking I was going to diversify, but I would just say, the market and the way things have been happening, you have to be able to kind of shift and adapt your strategy a little bit. I know there's some investors that are like just focused on one specialty and being really good at that. And I was doing that with legal 2-unit conversions, right? That's where I wanted to specialize and start. Selfishly, I had a primary residence with my wife, girlfriend at the time, and I wanted to add a legal second suite myself. So that's what kind of got me into that. And then when I got into real estate, I was like, okay, this is an interesting strategy. I'd like to help people or teach people with this. And then started doing kind of property tours, property workshops in the area. And it was kind of a good way to gain real estate business and educate people on, how to invest in real estate, which I was really deep down passionate about. The realtor side kind of came second. But for me, I've always been an investor first, realtor second, which is not always true for a lot of people. I know a lot of realtors that buy investment properties just because they obviously believe in the product and all that, but they're not as focused on it as I am in finding deals and looking at opportunities and doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, when in last November of 2021, I guess you guys will probably remember there was this legal 2-unit sale on Cromwell in Oshawa.
Yeah.
The first property that went for over $1 million, $1,005,000. And I was like, what's happening? Right? Like I was shocked, right? So that's when I was like, all right, I got to try something else. I got to shift and kind of went down to Florida and said, let's try this out.
Yeah.
And when you say,
No, I was just going to say, so we'll kind of get to Florida because that's pretty cool. And me and Paul, we have this conversation quite frequently. Like we actually said a month ago, why not buy something together down there, right? It'd be kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But before real estate, what were you doing? What was your gig before real estate?
Yeah. So I owned a gym. I
I worked out there and almost puked. That was a good time.
Yeah.
you never went back, you don't look like you've ever worked out.
Me either anymore, man. That's why I don't mention it anymore. They're like, you owned a gym. I'm like, I did look better, I swear.
I do remember
was training from you, eh?
That was when I was skinny at the time. I had the skinny abs and stuff. So people.
So you've kind of always been an entrepreneur in that sense, right? Always owning your own business, kind of knowing how to manage, people because you're dealing with people. And so you went from the gym. So how long did you own that for? Because I remember you had one location and was it down on Wentworth?
Yep.
And then you moved to another spot?
Just really across the street. We're still off Wilson there, just Wilson south of Bloor there.
Right, okay.
And I kind of, gave that up a couple of years ago. I owned it even when I was in real estate, but I just basically, once I got into real estate more full time, I'd say my first year of being registered, I was still doing more of the gym, but then you get your first or second commission check and you go, okay, I'm focusing on this. Yeah. And basically told my partner,
were you registered?
2016 is when I got registered. So, and then that year I was still pretty active in the gym and kind of just got got registered or got my real estate license, just kind of like, oh, this would be fun to get and try and dabble into. I didn't think I was going to go full time. Initially it was like, oh, this will help the gym, right? I can negotiate the leases. I can find, that was kind of my initial thought, but then I help a friend buy a house. I'll never forget my first check was $12,000 and was like, okay, that took me 6 months to make it the gym. It changed, but no, I came out of university and started the gym right away. So, I was 21, 22, starting a business.
So an entrepreneur right from day one.
And always had that mindset. I've always thought about, always thought about business and investing in some capacity. And I mean, it just continues to be that way. I don't ever stop thinking about business, in what regard. And to me, the business of real estate, of owning real estate, there's no better small business for the average person. After running a gym, being there at 5 a.m. till 9:30 at night going, going, what? Like this is, and then not owning any real estate or just having the cash flow. There's a lot of small businesses that I see that are just not making money, like really not doing much, making cash flow a little bit, but no like long-term wealth creation, no opportunity to pool money, no opportunity for expansion, that type of thing. I mean, I still really believe that real estate is the best way to build wealth for your average person.
What I find interesting, so before you were in real estate, you and your wife had a home and you converted it into a 2-unit property. So you're renting out the basement at the time. And that's when you said like, oh, this could be a good opportunity. But what I find interesting is there's people that know that, but you are right from the start, your goal was to like educate people and share that information with people. And I think that's pretty cool, right? So how did you start? Like I was saying, I ran into you at a property and you had 6 people in the driveway, and we're looking at this kind of original owner bungalow that would be a great opportunity to convert into a 2-unit dwelling. And you had a group of people in the driveway and you were educating them, and people that might not understand or might not know or be nervous to ask questions to their realtor, and you were out there educating these people and creating opportunity for them. So what made you kind of decide, like,
honestly, the gym is what made me realize that is a good way to attract clients, because we used to do it at the gym. So we'd have a free Saturday workout at 10 a.m. Anyone can come try it out. You get an hour, no strings attached. And what do? You get them to come out, you teach them a couple exercises, you get them to try a workout. And then usually people go, I like Cam, or I like the gym, or I like this atmosphere. I feel comfortable here. And then they work with you. So to me, I took that to real estate and went, hey, why not give people a taste of what I know? Like, how else do you attract people to you to say, come on out, let's look at some properties. And then you go, hey, the driveway's got to be this, ceiling height has to be that. And they go, oh, this guy knows his stuff. Okay, I'm going to work with him, right? So I stole it from the gym model that we had and just transferred it into real estate and thought, that. And there was other realtors in the area doing it. I shouldn't take credit for it because I stole it from them too, right? I saw it was working and I was like, damn, that works. That's a good strategy. So
I remember, because I got into real estate 2 years before you, and I remember seeing, I can't remember his name, but he worked for Remax, I believe, but he was doing the similar thing. And I think he was renting out like a bus or a big van or something like that and would tour people around, which was cool. But like for you to give up a Saturday, Sunday and basically put out to the public, like, look, I'm going to be here. If you want to be a part of this free information session, people love free stuff, right? But free education on, if they were just thinking about getting into, investing and you're willing to put your Saturday, Sunday, kind of time block it out. People appreciate that, but it's also super organic, right? You're not trying to sell them anything. You're just saying, this is where I'm going to be. There's going to be other people here like you. If you want to get educated, now's the time to come. And I remember seeing you starting it, doing it, and it was like a couple people. And then your list was like, I remember I saw one photo on Instagram that I think someone took a picture of you in the driveway and it was like a back shot. And there must have been 15, 20 people in the driveway. And I'm like, holy smokes, man.
What I had to start doing is letting the listing reps know what I was doing. And I would bring 2 or 3 realtors from my office to be like, don't worry, I have it covered. Because they were starting to get, like, I'd get calls to be like, dude, I'm bringing 15 people that want to potentially buy your property. I mean, but I got their concern of, hey, there's one of you, 15 of them. So I was like, okay, let me try to mitigate that. But no, it worked really well. People love free stuff. And I'd add them to an email list and just kind of, work through that and got a lot of sales that way and enjoyed it. But I then problem was I started having conflicts of interest where I'm like, I want this property. Or I'm going to buy it, right? So I'm like, again, my passion for wanting to do this, I believed in the product so much that I'm like, I'll buy this if you don't buy this. And, it wouldn't be bluffing, right? So, it got challenging. It still is challenging for me today, right? Because now if I find a really good deal, I'm going to buy it first, right? Instead of passing it off to a client, which is unfortunate, right? But
I think you've almost shifted in that sense too, because kind of shifting gears in the conversation here, but now you're purchasing properties, opening it up to people that are looking to invest, and you're turning around like a flip. You're purchasing them, renovating them, and then bringing them back to market and allowing other people to kind of jump in with you on that too.
Yeah, well, that's it. I started seeing other opportunities that weren't conversions, but I was like, this is still a good purchase. You could still make money on this. So that's when I got into flipping as well. And, basically asked my wife to quit her job, and she was in merchandising. And so she had that kind of design flair, and she's good at kind of managing, and she does have some knowledge, but I could then buy the property, pass it on to her, and she would manage the contractors and design it. And it was working really well. So yeah, we'd kind of mix in those when we could as well. But I mean, it kind of goes back to the original point you made about the different items that you can do, because the real estate isn't always just linear. Something comes up and you're like, shoot, that could work, right? I could do that, even though I'm focusing on legal 2 units. If I can make money on a quick flip, why wouldn't you, right?
It's very cool to see, because, I don't own any investment properties yet. My goal is to go into the Airbnb game through cottages and all that. But it's cool to see how you start from one avenue of real estate. And it's, as I've been in it for almost a decade now, like you see how it's not just like black and white real estate. Like there's so many different things you can do.
So many ways to make money.
It's absolutely crazy to me that, and a lot of it too. And like I always say, this is like my risk tolerance is brutal. Like I am not good at taking risk. I'm just not. And, if you have the ability to take the risk and see the reward, it's easier for you to do it again and again and again, right? Like for you to convert duplexes, tell people this is what you need to do, this is what you need to look for, and then you do it yourself. What's the term? You preach what you, whatever.
Practice what you preach.
Practice what you preach. English is my second language. But like you're doing that stuff, and then, you start seeing other opportunities, right? So you go from coaching people how to convert, then you buy them, convert them yourself, then you get into the flip game, and then you go into the Airbnb game, which we'll get into later on, which is pretty cool. But how do you find these deals, right? Because, I have investors that are looking for investment properties. I have clients that are flippers, but I know for everything, every flipper is different because it comes down to numbers, right? What you're putting in, what you can get out. So like, how are you coming across these deals?
Well, first I'll comment on one point you said about like the fear of getting around, the risk of it or tolerating that. It never gets easy. It is never, even this last flip I'm just completing right now, I was scared. I was super scared buying it. I was not confident. This market with higher interest rates now, everybody's basically doom and gloom right now. It's, be crazy to buy a flip in this market. So I'm like, I'm nervous, right? But you're never 100% confident. You're never going, yeah, this is it. I'm making 100,000, no problem. You don't know. And I remember the one townhouse we did a couple years ago, I was pretty sure we were going to break even. I was like, there was no comps to support it, nothing, even till the day I was listing it. And then I started getting the showings and went, okay. And we ended up making, I don't know, 150K on the flip or something. But I didn't know I was making money until I actually, even when I was done the flip, right? So it is challenging. And this is the hardest part to coach, is that kind of, cojones to say,
but
do it.
What's interesting with yourself is you minimize that risk for people, because my wife and I, we have a couple duplexes, and it was the hardest thing we've ever done. Like, is this going to work? What's going to happen? But you're educating, you've done it yourself. So you believe in your product, you believe in what you're doing, and you've done it. So I think the pretty amazing thing is that you're minimizing risk for people. You're educating them on it. You're showing them the return on it. So I think that's huge.
Flips are the hardest though. Flips, like what I liked about the legal 2 unit stuff is I felt way more confident doing a workshop and saying, no, you're going to buy it for 4, you're going to put in 100, it's going to be worth 6. Here's 5 comps to support that. And it is very black and white. So that's why I had an easy time selling those, where I'm like, no, legal 2 units are selling for 6 all day, every day. There was very consistent market at the time. It was just find the bungalow for 4, find it for 405, 410 at the most. And that was it. It was very straightforward. Flips are not like that. Flips are way tougher. Airbnbs are way tougher. So that's why I liked getting people to start with duplexes, buy a turnkey, or then convert, then go to flips. You have to build or exercise or work your risk tolerance where, and educate yourself too, right? As I'm sure you guys have learned a ton around managing tenants, around, how to be comfortable with that side of things first, before then like learning how to manage contractors, which is a whole nother beast, right? So there is still a lot of knowledge that you have to put into place. And that's where I've focused a lot of my energy, is like, keep learning. How can I keep learning? How can I keep connecting with people that are doing this, or watching YouTube videos or watching podcasts like this, where I'm going, okay, cool. I'm making notes and learning to go, now do some research and dig into it. And, I always preach, build a power team, right? Like hire realtors that are doing it in the area. When I went to Florida, I hired a realtor, right? I said, hey, you know the area, all the buildings, tell me what to invest in. And she was great and very active. And I got a mortgage broker down there. Then I got an insurance agent, and just, kind of was like, okay, start sending me property, start sending me numbers. And then having the ability to kind of, make myself feel more comfortable about the purchase with education, right? With going, okay, my realtor's showing me this. They're showing me the building made 100K. My mortgage brokers tell me I could put 30% down and get this interest rate. Okay. Right. And you just kind of put the pieces together, and then the last part is the toughest to actually pull the trigger and go, all right, let's do it, right? And there is a bit of risk around that.
That's really cool.
So would you say the riskiest type of real estate investment you're saying would be to flip properties? Or
For sure.
Yeah?
For sure.
That's just because it comes down to timing the market, buying in the right market, selling in the right market?
Yep. Yeah, you're just there's so many more things that can go wrong where if your time horizon is short, and you guys would remember what happened in April of 2017 when Kathleen Wynne announced that whatever it was, new housing plan or whatever, and just like the market just went
like overnight,
right? And it's like things like that happen. Even this February when the interest rates started going up, it just like over 2 or 3 months, if any of those people were flipping, they took a bath, and there's tons of it. I'm sure you guys are seeing it on MLS where you look it up and go, ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. Or they're still trying to sell it at a February price, and we're going, sorry guys, I don't know what to tell you. You took a bath there, right?
Offloading it at that time.
Where even the long-term investments, you have that longer horizon, and I mean, it's always risky. Any business is risky, no matter what. You can always lose money. There's always challenges with it. So I mean,
so with flipping, this blows my mind. Before we started the recording here, we were talking about your most recent flip, and we were saying flipping properties, you do have to time that market. You got to buy in the right market, and you got to sell in the right market. So you purchased a property, you closed on it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And most flippers, it's like 6 months to a year, right? Preparing it and then bringing it to market. So you're 2 weeks in and you've already brought this property to market. So you're eliminating that fear of playing the markets almost.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's not, it depends on the timing of what you want to rent or what you want to do. And this is the challenge around flipping is that, so I bought the property, and what I was seeing in the market, like second week of January, we started getting multiple offers again. And I'm going, okay, kept watching, kept following up, studying the market, going, we're getting multiple offers back here. Like things are, not dropping anymore. They're at least stabilizing. They may not be going up, but as long as they don't drop, I'm fine, right? Then I can at least say, okay, I don't have to account for a 5% loss in the market. So then I started being like, okay, I'm open to flipping again, because I wasn't up until then. When the market's dropping, really, really tough to know how quickly it's going to drop, really run numbers when you're like, okay, I got to count for a 10% loss. Who knows, right? You're trying to predict the market, which is never easy. So I was like, okay, things are stabilizing, things are picking up. Then it's a matter of analyzing, okay, is this deal good enough that I could throw it on the market as is? That's always my first question, because if it's not a deal.
That's a great point.
Right? It's not a deal. So my initial plan was to do nothing to it and throw it on the market. I go, there's multiple offers right now. There's bidding wars in this price point. I can lock up this property in a low price point and make a quick $50K. I started doing the reno. I ripped up, there was carpet over top, which I thought was over top of the old hardwood, because that was in one of the back bedrooms. Once I ripped it up, I went, oh, it's only subfloor. And I'm like, I don't think I could put it up with just subfloor on the market. People might have financing concerns at that time. So I was like, all right, talk to my contractor. I was like, what can we do? I want to be on this week. I want to be on Thursday. I was like, what can we do in 3 days? He's like, I could do this, 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 and this. I was like, go. And he brought in a team of 6. So we ended up doing pretty much the main floor in 3 days. We painted the whole house. We did flooring, baseboards. We painted the kitchen cabinets, did new hardware, got new appliances, retiled the bathroom, new vanity, toilet. So the main floor is pretty much done. Right?
I followed him on Instagram, and it was like, took a screenshot of,
or
took
a
picture of like Wednesday.
Yeah, I saw that. That was wild.
I was like, what?
People are even now, right now. Like I had a text. I had a text from a local realtor that was like, when did you rent? Like they're all confused. They're like, is this an assignment? Because, Geo Warehouse hasn't updated, so no one can see what I paid for the property even, right? So they're going, it shows, so I'm like somebody else, it shows somebody else owns it, and they paid $68,000 20 years ago, right? Which is obviously I bought it off them. And then, so people are just kind of perplexed. They're either thinking I'm scamming, or like there's some type of fraud case, or it's an assignment sale. And I'm like, no, Geo Warehouse just doesn't open. I may even have to on offer night I wouldn't be surprised I'd have to show people, look, I am the owner. Here's talk to my lawyer.
Especially what's going on now with those like 2 houses in Toronto that sold and the owners were out in Florida or whatever. Like it's the one thing that's cool about flipping is because I've thought about it again, but I'm too scared to spend any money because again, I'm just not educated enough on the process. I'm not educated enough on, what's the positive, what's the negative, and my brain, just the way it works is always like, well, what if this doesn't happen, right? Yep. And like, especially with flipping, especially now in today's world, is you're at the mercy of clickbait season, right? Like
Yeah.
it's headline season for the
Yeah.
last year. Like every day, the media, Toronto Star, CP24, they're putting out all these doom and glooms. But it's funny because in the last 4 weeks in Durham, any house under 800,000 is going in 10, 15, 20 offers.
Yeah.
And you look back a year, it was 40 days on market for $750,000 house. Like no one was pulling trigger. The rates are saying that they're done going up, and now everyone's comfortable, right? So that's what's kind of cool to me is like, A, that you found this property. Like, did you buy it off market? Like, did you have a connection or?
Yeah, so you can never buy flips on the MLS. It just,
Right.
I have yet never, I've always run numbers on them and I never see them that work. You know, anyone who buys it and tries to flip it, it just, you're not getting a deep enough discount. You know, the money is truly made on the buy. So it's either through exclusive list, like exclusive realtors that I've spoken to and thrown it out to them and said they know, like that's why I put it out there. I'll buy your moldy house. I'll buy your cracked foundation. I'll buy it, you know, and I'll solve that problem. So it's either through them where it's not going on MLS. I could say, here's what I'd pay. I won't take a commission and I'll lock this up. You take whatever commission you want. Here's what I'm going to pay. Or it's through wholesalers. So wholesalers are the people that have we buy houses for cash. They legit will buy your house and close on it in 2 weeks, but they'll assign it to someone like me. So they'll buy it, get it under contract, flip me over the contract. So the house that I bought, the wholesalers bought it for $620. They were trying to sell it for $670, right? The contract. So they were trying to make $50K. And in the market that was happening, they were making millions of dollars, millions through this. And their fees would be $100,000, right? For per flip, right? Or per house. And it's an unregulated market because they're not realtors, so they don't have any sort of fiduciary duty. And so when I buy the property, I disclose that I'm a realtor to the wholesaler, but the owner doesn't ever need to know, right? The contracted, they have a firm deal. And so they assign the contract to me. So in this case, I said to them, look, in this market, I can only pay $625. I know you're asking $670. No one else bought it. And they said, okay. So I paid them a $5,000 wholesale fee. I bought it for $625.
How somebody looking to get into this market, what groups should you be a part of or to get these?
Just honestly, when you see the sign, call the number and say, hey, I'd love to be on your buyer's list.
Okay, cool.
You know, and you'll go, I get 15 emails a day from wholesalers from all over Ontario, and I wait for the ones in Durham region because that's the market I know.
Yeah.
As soon as there's one in Durham region, I'm all over it. I'm viewing it. I'm negotiating. I'm running numbers on it and seeing if it's a deal because these wholesalers are also, you know, trying to make a buck, right?
Yeah.
So they'll, you know, you can buy a bad wholesale deal, but when you know your market, like you guys will know the market, you'll know when the deal makes sense, right? And you'll go, that's a deal, right?
And on a typical flip, let's say you were to come in and the house is structurally okay, it's dated, might need, so you're coming in there and you're doing aesthetics, like you're coming in, you're changing flooring.
Sometimes.
You're changing bathrooms, fixtures, kitchens.
Yep.
I think the public has this perception that to do a reno is very extensive, which it is, and very costly. But what could you come in and flip a property? Like, what's your budget when for it to make sense?
You know, so going back to that story of saying where when I bought the property for $625, I thought I could sell it on MLS for $715. We were seeing some of those like bungalows in Oshawa.
If you did nothing.
If I did nothing, right? Yeah. There was one down in South Oshawa that went for $715. One on Seneca that went. There was 3 or 4 that sold, needed full rentals for $715. So I went, okay, I'll buy it for $625. Do nothing, throw it on MLS, sell it for $715. That was option 1. Option 2, I ended up doing the main floor, right? So now I'm going, okay, I should get $750, $775. I'd be happy with that. I spent $30K on the reno. I'm all in with interest for my investors, with everything for about just under $7, like $690. So if I sell it for $775, I'll make $85,000 in 2 weeks, right? Which I'm super happy with. If that doesn't work,
man.
2 weeks.
But if that doesn't work, I have another strategy. I can do the basement. The basement is not renoed. I only did the main floor. The basement needs a full reno too. So I thought, okay, someone could come in. It's baseboard heat, so someone's going to want to convert to gas. So to me, it just didn't make sense to say why would I do the basement and then do all the ceilings, and then someone's going to want to convert it anyway. So, but if this doesn't work, if I don't get the offer I want, I could pull it off the market, redo that. So the point is, you need a couple exit strategies, right? And then even this one, what I really liked about it was it could be a legal 2 unit. So I'm like, I could go back to my bread and butter of what I know will be a solid legal 2 unit in Oshawa. So I had 4 exit strategies on this. And that's why I could confidently go to investors and say, look, your money is safe. I bought a deal off market. The person didn't use a realtor like they should have. That's their own fault.
Yeah.
Realtor would have got them more money, but these people think they're clever saving realtor commissions. Yet they're,
Can I actually do a little personal story here?
Yeah.
Which I thought's pretty cool.
Go.
So I had it was a very rundown house in a not so nice area in Oshawa. And the lady called me and she goes, Paul, I'm thinking of selling my house, but my neighbor, I could sell it off market. My neighbor will give me $450 for it.
Yeah, of course.
And
I remember this last
year.
Was this last year?
Yeah, last year. And she goes, my neighbor will give me $450 for it. I'm like, okay. I said, and she goes, and I'm with your real estate commission and this and that.
They think it's
they think they're saving. It's like, okay, you're saving $20,000. You think you're saving $20,000. So I'm like, you know what? I think I'm pretty confident I can get you more taking my real estate commission into consideration as well. So we ended up cleaning out the whole property, dumpsters on site. We cleared it. It just showed it vacant, cleaned it up, put a ton of marketing behind it. We ended up selling it for $615, and her neighbor was going to give her $450 for it.
That's insane.
And on Christmas, she wrote me a card with some cash in it. She goes, "You made me very happy." Like, so people have
you made me very rich.
You have this. People have this like negative about real estate agents or commit, but it's like and we were talking about this, or we always talk about it when we're going into listing appointments, is shifting the seller's mindset to how much can I save on real estate commission to how much can I net. How much money can I actually make on my investment, right? Because so many people are thinking, if without real estate, I could save this, but it's how much are you leaving on the table without real estate? And that's a great example of it.
It is. And like to go to your point, it's like those people who have that thought process, that's passed down through who they're talking with, who aren't in real estate, right? Like don't hire a realtor. It's like, but when you have somebody that knows what they're doing, has the proof to back it up and can show you the numbers that make sense. Because a lot of people who are thinking that way, they haven't been shown the actual big picture of like what's actually going on, right? Like, I can save $25,000 in real estate, but the same house, the same model sold a month ago for $550, but they don't know that because they don't see that data, right? So when you can provide that insight and information to somebody and deliver it in a way that, again, you're not trying to sell them on it. At the end of the day, they make their own choice, but like, and it comes down to finding the right person that's actually in this industry. We talked about in the first episode is like, there's a lot of people in this industry that aren't in it for the right reasons. And, obviously we're in it to make money. This is our job. This is how we put food on the table. But at the same time, it's like, I want to see Cam make an extra $150,000 than he thought he was going to, because then you're going to walk out and go call Paul and be like, Paul, you got to call Kyle, man. He just crushed it for me. Right. So like that, it's cool to see. And like, I have stories like that as well, where people were just like, I think I'm just going to sell it privately to my family member. I'm like, hey, that's fine. It's your house. Do what you want. But you're going to leave $200,000 on the table. Like, I know you love your uncle, but do you like $200,000 more?
And it's actually the people that think that are creating this great offer for them. Guess who they're in it for? They're in it for themselves.
That's I mean, they have no idea the wholesalers turn this around and take the cut, right?
Exactly. When you're a real estate agent, you're working in the best interest of your client, the seller. I'm not sitting there and be like, oh yes, another commission check. You know what I mean? Like absolutely. We are working in the best interest
fiduciary of our duty, right? That's a huge role for realtors. Is you cannot go to someone's house, and I've actually had problems with that because I'll go to a listing appointment, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'd buy this for this amount, right? And I'm like, no. As soon as I start talking to them, I now cannot do that, right? But and it's like wholesalers don't have that obligation, and I don't understand why they sell to wholesalers, right? It's like you're telling me, and that's why I don't feel bad. Some people are like, oh, well, you're, and I'm like, no, you're telling me there's not a realtor they did not a bus, how many realtors are plastered everywhere? Everywhere. I'm like, you couldn't call one for them to say, I could get you more, and let's throw it on MLS to see what it's crazy.
Commission brain, right? It's like worried about
it's their own fault.
What are you making? Like, it's like, no, what are you going to make?
Well, that's it. That's it. And you want to hear a funny story? I actually knew the seller of this property I'm flipping. So we go do the revisit or walkthrough, and he goes to me, he goes, are you the CrossFit guy? And I'm like, I haven't been for a long time, right? So I'm like, that's weird that he connected that. He actually used to own the business next to, I used to see him every morning. And he'd be one of those, hey, how's it going? Good morning. And I was like, holy shit, I know the guy, right?
No way.
And I'm like, so it's, again, I'm kind of like, hey, call me or call some, if you had done that, someone would have told you the market is picking up. We could probably get you 715 minus, even 40K commissions. You're still netting more than what they sold it for at 620, right? Wow. So, all it is to me is just taking advantage of market knowledge, right? Which, as realtors, that's an advantage we have. We're studying the market. And should it be allowed? We're making the disclosures where I'm supposed to.
Kyle, you said something earlier on in the conversation about you were just scared, like worried about making the decision. What if, like you're thinking about the what ifs. And I had a thought. Some really good advice I got. Sandy McKay. I'm not sure if you know Sandy McKay.
He's a good investor too. Yeah,
he's a really good investor.
Crushes it.
I met with him when we were at our Keller Williams convention in Dallas, and this is where, and he said something very similar to you. You're like, it never gets easier, right? And he has a very impressive portfolio, and I'm talking to him about buying my first duplex. So I'm like, what this guy's probably looking at me like, okay, buddy, like I own all this. Yeah. And he goes, you know what, Paul, on every deal, you do a pros and cons list. And if the pros outweigh it then becomes a simple decision. Because if the pros outweigh the cons, then and thinking about the what ifs and different exit strategies and stuff, for the most part in real estate investing, the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah, well, it's funny because that's kind of where like myself and my wife are heading next is like, we want to buy a cottage specifically out in Halliburton because it's a really good Airbnb area. I've been studying the process and all that. So I guess this would be kind of a good time to jump into you in terms of the Airbnb because, like I said, myself and my wife want to buy a cottage and, there's, it comes at the expense of putting a large down payment on a cottage because cottages aren't cheap anymore. Yeah. I found they didn't come down quite as much as residential did, specifically waterfront because obviously we want to enjoy the cottage as well. Yeah. But there's added fees with Airbnb and I think in the States, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's VRBO. Is that they're different? Do you use Airbnb or VRBO or both?
Both. Yep.
Okay.
Both.
And now, what do those fees? Because you're paying a property manager because you're not in Florida right now.
No,
right?
I don't pay a property manager.
You do not. So if the tenant calls you and says the toilet's flooding, you contact a plumber down there and they just go do it.
Yep.
Really?
So it's so funny. It's so funny hearing this because this is where I'd be like, what happens if you're at home? If at your house the toilet started leaking, what would you do?
I run out a house.
You call a plumber and they come.
We got to move.
This is it.
We're moving.
This is it. You'd be like, I'd call a plumber and they come and fix it. It's no different, and people act like it's like, I don't know. I was going to say some country.
When it's not your toilet, it's a problem.
Well, it's like, no, you call someone and they fix it, right? Yeah. It's like there's people out there that do that, right? And I mean, that's one thing, for me. So when I bought in Florida, one thing I did to mitigate my own, fears around doing it is I bought something that was fully furnished and was already on Airbnb.
Nice.
So the condo that I bought was right on the beach, 3-bedroom and 3-bedroom, 2-bath. 2 of the bedrooms have king-size beds in them. So to me, these were all like
Where
things.
in Florida?
Just outside of Tampa. So St. Petersburg area. There's Indian Shores, Clearwater.
Sounds like a horrible
Treasure
place to
Island.
be
It's awesome, right? And,
Jesus,
and we know about the area because my wife was actually born there and her mom lives there.
Okay.
So we were going down there all the time, right? Renting spaces down there. So I was but even before going down there, I had a good sense of the beaches and the area. But even still, the realtor I used was great in being like, no, these have 7-day minimum rentals. These are 30. This building has this special assessment. This has this. So, the local knowledge she had was great too. But going back, like I mitigated the risk. So I'm like, this condo had made $106,000 the year before on Airbnb. It was fully renovated, fully furnished.
Like just that unit?
Yeah. But that's why I could run my numbers. I'm like, I talked to my mortgage broker. I'm like, okay, I'm putting this down. And it was simple math of going, okay, I'm going to make this much per month, this much per year. I feel good about it. And I did it. The one challenge was in my mind, the management, right? So I'm going, everything I've heard is like, this is a crazy active business. It's not like a duplex where, it's very passive. And like the one app that literally saved my bacon or still does to this day is called Turnover BnB or Turno. And it's for cleaners. It works the same way as Airbnb, but for cleaners. So essentially what I did is I put in my address and it finds cleaners for you. In that area, it's littered with it, right? Even places in cottage country where they're doing this, there'll be cleaners in the area that you could search and they have connections with handy people. They know how to turn over the unit. They have all the checklists. So I hired one of the ladies who's still my cleaner and I've still never met. And she does all my turnovers. So it's connected to Airbnb. It's connected to my property management software, which is called Lodgify. And so people will instant book on Airbnb. They'll say, okay, so-and-so booked your place for this week. My cleaner will say, yep, I've received received this, and I'll get a notification from Turnover BnB to say she's got it. Once she does the turnover, I'll get she uploads photos, go around and take photos, follows the checklist, and then money goes right into my account.
So is your return a lot higher on Airbnb versus long-term rental?
Way higher.
Yeah.
Like stupid higher.
Yeah.
And it's American when you convert
it's an American money.
right?
Yeah.
Like
I had a question too. Like
from day one, the property made me $5,000 US per month profit.
So why
you're making
Florida?
like $8
Why
grand
Florida?
Canadian a month.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Florida? There's obviously, like Kyle's looking at Airbnbs here. You're
was
far away. It's in a different country. Like, why did you choose Florida?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there was a little bit of selfishness there in that it was kind of our cottage because my wife's mom lived there. So I was kind of like, we're already going down there all the time. It just kind of was like, we can go down there whenever we want. Even my wife's taking the kids down there this week and just, can go at any time. And it's kind of like our cottage, right? We already, we couldn't not see my wife's mom. So we were like, okay. But then also it was just like, it was just also still, one thing that I looked at was the seasonality. Like the condo only had 1 week last year that wasn't booked.
That's insane, man.
Where in cottage country, my challenge was you have 4 months to make your money, and you could get it booked out in the winter, but very rare, and even then you're at really reduced rates. So it was more just a numbers game. It was the cleaners, right? Like I have 4 backup. Like there's so many cleaners in that area. That's what their business is down there.
So
right?
the rates change seasonal. Like obviously in the summer, not as many people are.
Oh, like the rental rate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big time. And that's so I started then using and all this I was learning along the way, right? So all this I didn't know before I bought it, but I was like, you can learn it, right? You can figure it out.
Like
There's
anything.
people doing this, right? So I found this other app called Price Labs, which essentially analyzes like the competition in the area and it adjusts your pricing for you. So even like the book, like my first year, I was just like, let me actually, this is another kind of funny story. So what I did is I bought it, like November, and I was closing December 21st in 2021. So I had a 45-day closing period. What I did is as soon as I went firm on it or purchased it, I took the listing photos and I threw it up on Airbnb. So I had $45,000 in bookings before I even closed on it,
So
which I don't think you're allowed to do. But this was me going like, I need to mitigate my risk. But that's why I didn't want something like I paid a premium for it to be turnkey, to be fully furnished, because I could do that. So I'm like closing on it going, I closed on it on the Friday. My first guest came on the Monday. I was there for 2 days, like just kind of cleaning. I was doing little odds and ends and things like that. I flew out. My first guest came in. I had, $8,000 in money in my bank from Airbnb before my first mortgage payment came out. So I was like, it was super safe. And it just, again, the numbers made sense to me. And at the time, interest rates were low. I'm locked into a 30-year term.
Yeah, that's crazy in the States.
30-year term.
They don't change the rate for 30 years.
I don't have to worry for 30 years.
Yeah,
any interest rate.
In the States, it's nuts. Like because my dad lives in Arizona, and the same thing, because we have to renegotiate every 5 or whatever you do. So if you get a 2% in the States and they're now, let's say 6%, all those people that are in for like 2, they're like laughing.
Who's doing variable at that point?
Right? Yeah.
Are you fixed or are you variable?
No, I'm fixed.
Fixed in the States, obviously, because like wouldn't
but
really
that's
make
why
sense.
on the condo, I was like, I can lock in for 30 years. I know this thing makes $100,000 a year. It's right on the beach, a 3-bedroom, sunset every night. I'm like, is there ever going to be a time, even in a recession, when someone's not going to want to book this to be on the beach in Florida? To me, it was a safety net. And at the time, remember, so I paid $935 for this condo, $935,000 American. Right? American.
Yeah, so it's like 1-2-ish
Yeah,
Canadian.
but there was bungalows selling here for the same in Oshawa, right? So I'm like, that are bringing in $4,000 a month Canadian.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, do I buy the bungalow in Oshawa or do I buy this that makes $100,000 a year? It brings in $10,000 a month, right? American. So I'm like,
you ever seen the sunset in Oshawa?
it's pretty good, but I don't know.
Pretty nice.
So another question would be, because this is something my wife and I are interested in, Kyle and I spoke about it, some other friends, how hard is it to purchase in the States and obtain a mortgage?
Super easy. Everything's easy. Like literally, people overthink it way too much. If you contact a mortgage broker, any mortgage broker in the States or even in Canada, a lot of them have connections. They'll be like, you need 30% down. Let me run your credit like they would in here. And they'll say you're pre-approved for this amount, right? That's always step one. And so when I talked to my mortgage broker, I was like, he is the same guy that I use. So I was like, you know all my numbers, you have all my stuff. He's like, yeah, I could get you that mortgage, but you'll need 30% down. I said, sweet. What interest rate can I get? He gave me the rate. Great. Contacted a realtor. Realtor said, yeah, no problem. Let me know when you want to start shopping.
So it's essentially the same as purchasing.
It's the exact same. Opening a bank account. Like people, crazy. I get weird questions of like, how do you let people in? I'm like, I put a digital lock on and send them the code. Like everything nowadays with technology has made things so easy that, again, I don't need to hire a property manager. I was kind of like at first wanting to do it myself to learn, but I was always like, yeah, I could hire, like I'm making enough money that I could hire a manager to take this over. But again, I was finding it pretty straightforward once I had the cleaner, right? Because I was worried, I'm like, I'm going to have to, every time there's a turnover, call them, book them in. I don't do any of that. I don't have to do any work with that. So, I mean, the only time I'm doing work is if there's a problem, if something breaks down, which could happen with any property. The one time the guest messaged me, said the air conditioner's not working. I said, okay, there's 40 air conditioner companies in Florida. I called one, the guy went over, he said, yeah, send him a bill. It was like a $200 bill.
Which is such a, like, and it's kind of crazy. I put a video out on Instagram, like, about the whole tenant thing. Like, people investing in real estate, they're scared that the tenant's going to call them at 3 a.m. every time, right? But like the chances of something going wrong, some stuff's going to go wrong. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. But it's not like something every week that there's a new guest, like, boom, something's wrong. Boom, something's wrong. It's like, it's not going to happen that way.
The reward is way higher.
100%. And like, if you look at, again, risk tolerance, it's like, okay, do I have to eat maybe $1,000 this year in expenses to fix stuff versus making $100,000? Well, pretty good return, right? No matter what. So that's pretty crazy.
So man. I remember the handy, because that was like, I had all these same fears, right? I'm acting confident now, but I was scared shitless too, right? So you know what I mean? Like, when I bought it, I'm like, I need a handyman. I need a handy person. Like, what if something goes wrong? So the cleaners had somebody. I remember the guy that I used. I needed literally one of my second guests, the microwave. It was like an over-the-range microwave broke, and I'm like, oh my god, like, what am I going to do here? So I call this handyman. I'm like, what should I do? He's like, well, I can go to Walmart, buy it for you, install it, and I'll just send you the bill and give you the receipt. I'm like, okay. And he did it smooth as can be. I gave him an extra $100 on top of it, and he lost his mind.
Yeah, he's there every time.
He's like, oh my god, like, you don't need to do this. And I'm like,
so nice.
I'm like, no, I appreciate you did that. How quick you were. You did it within a day. Fair pricing. Didn't everything was normal. And he's like, oh man, you're awesome. Like, thank you. Like, don't worry, I'm gonna help you. And so now I know anytime I have a problem, I can call him and he can do a little bit. So I mean, like, it's just little things like that you can do to be like, okay, mitigate those risks or those things in your mind of going like, what if I get a call here and all that? And you do get the calls. They do happen rarely, like you're saying, but there are times when you have to deal with a situation. But for the amount of money you're making, I'm like, okay,
I build a good team too, right? Like, you're going to make connections along the way. It's kind of like, renting out a legal duplex, right? Treating the tenants the way you would want to be treated if you were renting it, right? If you treat them like shit, they're going to treat you like shit, and they're going to treat your property like shit, right? So like, building a good team, as long as you have that mentality, right? Because at the end of the day, you're renting it out to people, right? They're not just money. Same thing with real estate. We don't look at people as just commission checks. They're people, and that's their money. They're spending money on something you own. So you want to treat them with respect.
Give them a
good product. And if you do that and you deliver the good experience, guess what? They're going to come back. The next July that they've booked it for this July, guess what they're doing next July? They're calling you back.
Well, that's what I'm finding now too. I'm getting repeat bookings of people coming back. And
what's the longest you rent for on Airbnb? Like, is it typically like
the guest staying right now? Is there for 21 days, 3 weeks in the condo, and he paid $10,000 American for just the 3 weeks in like the most prime time. But even since I started using Price Labs, like, they'll recommend I put a price, and I'm like, no way, right? And
too high or too low?
Too high. Like I'm like, there's no way. Like people do that all the time, right? You see with new realtors that undercut themselves, right? Undercut their commissions and things like that. They just don't have the confidence. If they really just ask for the price, you'd be shocked at what people will pay, and this is no different, where you put it up there and people pay it.
People want nice things, people want nice service,
and they'll pay for it.
A quick question: we were talking before we started the podcast about now I'm drawing a blank, but so one, do you purchase your investments through a corporation, or do you put them all in your personal name?
The flips I do in our Canadian corporation, and the American properties are in my personal name.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there is ways to structure it, but I hired an accountant, and he was like, for your first 2, you're fine. in that way. You'll get better financing, better rates. They'll be more secure in that you'll cash flow really well, which was kind of more important to me, where, the idea of, and even I'm speaking to people about LLCs and all that, and they don't give you the same protection like people think they do, but then you get double taxed. So it's in your personal name in the States. You do, like, there's a tax treaty between Canada and the States. So any tax that you pay to the Americans, you get credit for in Canada.
And here was my question about, we were talking before about purchasing in Florida, and this doesn't really apply to Airbnb, but more for long-term rentals. You were mentioning about there's no rent control down there. So can you speak a little more about that?
Yeah. So I bought, like, the first property I bought was a condo. The second one was a duplex, like a side-by-side duplex, 1 bedrooms. And it came with 2 tenants, both paying $1,300 a month. And, so I told you the story about how I bought the condo being super safe. The duplex I bought sight unseen, closing in 2 weeks, off a wholesaler in the States. So I went like one extreme to the other. I was like, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident, and went to like a super risky purchase. Right. Anyways, and taking on 2 tenants, right? That I'm like, oh boy, but their leases were expiring. Literally the one, like I called them, I got to know them. The one tenant, the lady was crazy. She was nuts. So I was like, I'm not renewing her. I'm going to Airbnb that side. The other guy, I was kind of like debating, do I Airbnb this? Do I keep him? He's a great guy. And so I kept him on long-term. I raised him up to $1,800 a month.
Here the minimum is 2%, right?
Yeah.
So in Florida, there's no minimum.
Nothing. No restrictions. You can sign whatever length of lease you want. Everything's very contractual. It's like commercial real estate here, in that once the lease expires, then it's open to renew. You can ask them to leave. You can raise whatever rent you want. So that was last year. This year, I just renewed him again, and called him, and I said, he actually emailed me in December and was like, Cam, what are you thinking? Like, and I'm like, that doesn't happen around here, right? But he was nervous for his April lease renewal, right? And I'm like, don't worry, I'm planning on keeping you. I will raise the rent a little bit. He was like, okay. So then, finally we've come around to kind of getting it finalized. And I called him and I was like, okay, I was thinking of raising it to like 1,900, 1,950, 2,000. Like, what are your thoughts? And he's like, I'm good with 2,000 a month. I'm fine with that. And I said, well, and he goes, well, he said, my limit would be 2,000. I said, well, why don't we do 1,950? He goes, you know what, Cam, just make it 2,000. I'm fine with that.
What a great negotiator.
Yeah. Honestly, right? Because I'm like,
crazy.
I want him to be happy. And like, honestly, we had the hurricane last year and all that. This guy, like, hurricane shuttered my whole house for me. Like, he's honestly been an asset to have on the ground.
But here it would be fighting over the $20 increase in rent, right? It's
that's it. They'd be like,
it's
F you
going
and
up
all
$50.
That. Like, he's just so happy that I'm renewing his lease and all that. And again, it is going back to the relationship business stuff, right? Like, after the hurricane, like, I gave him a $200 gift card to say thank you just for like boarding up my property, which he didn't have to do, and little stuff like that, where if you treat them well, like anything, it can be a good business. The other point I wanted to make when we were talking about keeping problems from happening is being proactive, either with the tenant or with the property itself. I find the biggest problem with investment property owners is they're not doing their quarterly inspections and then asking the tenant, what do you want updated? What do you want fixed, right? I went into my property earlier I forget when it was, earlier in this year, and doing like an inspection, and there was like a slow leak coming out of the water meter, and I was going like, why didn't you let me know this? Like, we didn't want to bother you. I'm like, they're paying for the water, but I'm like, you're paying for the water, one. So, but also I'm like, just let me know. But because I was proactive, I was like, got a plumber in there, fixed it, and they were like, amazing. Like, it's just those little things that, either tenants or if it's Airbnb stuff, guests really appreciate. Like, I went down in December for a week to the condo, repainted a wall, changed some of the linens, like proactively made it nice so that the experience was good, as opposed to some people that would have been like, I'm not wasting my money on that. I'll wait till I get a bad review and then try to like fix it, right? So I mean, you do have to have that business mentality with all of this, and appreciate that kind of stuff, right?
For sure. With and this was some more advice I got from Sandy, is with duplexes or rentals here, rentals anywhere, you attract the clientele from how your property shows, right? If you give them a nice clean unit, you're going to attract nice clean tenants. And if you there doesn't have to be a landlord tenant feud all the time, right? It could actually be a really positive relationship. And I mean, we have some tenants that just had a baby, so we'd go and brought them a gift, or you bring them wine on closing, or give them gifts at Christmas or whatever, right? And be constant communication, give them a nice clean product, and you'll get that in return. So
totally.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of landlords, is they come into it with the mindset they're cheap. You can't be cheap.
No.
And they come into it, well, I don't need to do that, or that's not what they're very, what's the rule book say? Where at the end of the day, if you're just a good person and you provide a a good, clean living space and experience, you're going to get that.
And that's why, like, I don't have property managers for any of my properties, because I just feel like people don't, like, the manager won't care as much as you do, you know. And to me, there's way too much on the line with money and with, you know, the relationships and the quality that I just don't feel. And maybe my opinion will change, but I just don't feel that, you know, it's too risky. It's just too risky, in my opinion, to hire somebody to take care of your large asset that is, like, you know, making you either a lot of money, but you still have a lot of money equity invested into it, right? So I don't know. Maybe that's just my personality type though too. But
that's a good mentality to have. I mean, it's your baby, right? So you want to.
But everyone says, like, anything you see, you'll be like, hire manager. Like, you're not a landlord. You're not this. You're not. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is not invest money. If you want to invest in real estate, you can invest and get 12% returns easily and get a way better return than being a landlord. If you want to be a landlord, or you want to be an Airbnb owner or a house flipper, they're active businesses. They're all active businesses in my mind, just different levels. But you have to be prepared, or else you'll get these horror stories of my tenants stop paying, and I'll be like, when was the last time you talked to them? Like 6 months ago. I'm like,
there's your answer.
I'm like, come on, this is just, you know, it's just common sense stuff, right? Where, you know,
that's cool.
But
all right, well, we've been going for 45 minutes. I don't want to keep it too long, but I guess to kind of close out, if you could give any piece of advice to whether you're looking to get into investing, you know, on the duplex side, getting into the flipping, getting into the Airbnb game, like, what would you say? Let's say someone to like myself who doesn't have the biggest risk tolerance but wants to get into that. What would you say to somebody that's thinking about doing that?
Well, two things. One is keep learning. So the more you learn, the more comfortable you'll feel, like running numbers, you know, educating yourselves about, you know, challenges that could happen. You know, I don't believe in to just like take action and like do things blindly. Like, you still have to be, the more you educate yourself, the more, you know, you learn, but you don't want to have analysis by paralysis where you're like, you feel like you need to learn too much where it holds you back from making a decision. You got to have a nice little balance there of like, okay, I feel good about this. Let's take action, and I'll keep learning along the way. So that's one. And two is start surrounding yourself with people that have that positive message. And I know that's kind of cliche or corny, but I still go to Durham REI every month, which is kind of an investment meetup. You know, relatively cheap. It's not like a weekend course where you're paying $5,000 and they're just going to kind of spew stuff at you. But you know, it's an environment that I like. Like, even when I go there, there's not a lot of time. There's some months where I'm like, I didn't really learn much there, or something like that. But it's just a positive message that is so different from, you know, what you're seeing on the news or talking to friends and family. Or like, you know, when I bought this last flip, you should have seen the messages I got. They're like, Cam, you're nuts. Like, everything is telling me not to do it. But when you speak to investors, they don't talk about the same stuff. They're not talking about, you know, the interest rates. They're not talking about that type of stuff. They're going, is the deal good? Is it purchased? What strategy are you using? Maybe you should modify your like, it's more proactively about, you know, how should you switch strategies? Should you buy a Burr project right now in Oshawa? Probably not. It's probably not the best strategy to use at this stage if the numbers don't make sense. But there's other strategies. There's other ways to make money. There's other ways to, you know, invest in real estate. So, you know, when you surround yourself with those people, like, it's almost every time I go every month, it's like a nice, like, I leave there going like, okay, like, yes, I can keep going, like, keep moving forward. It's just some positivity to kind of inject into yourself where, you know, and you could do that different ways too, whether that's through podcasts or videos of going, okay, you know, but if you just listen to people around you that aren't doing it, of course, your messaging is going to be no.
But I find that people safe. Not doing it are the first to comment all the problems with doing it. And then you put yourself around people that are doing it, and it's positive. And they're.
I've been on Twitter recently this year, and it's probably the biggest mistake I've ever made. Like, it is so negative. Yeah. The people on there are all anonymous and just like, you know, but, you know, and engaging and all that. And I'm like, I can't wait till this flip sells, and I tweet out.
Yeah.
You know, just did this, and then being like, they're going to be like, wait, what? You can do that in this market? And it's like, look, if the situations make sense, it can. And I mean, you know, if you were to just go on a negative source like that, you'd never buy a house. You'd never get invested.
I think that's what the problem is. Like Duke was saying about like the media around real estate. It's like they want to create a negative impact.
Well, they control the narrative too, right? Like, that's the whole thing. They can control what they put put out. And if, again, they do have some control on the market in a sense, because you're changing someone's mindset to, well, my agent who sells 100 houses a year is telling me like, no, it's a good time, but the media is telling me that the market's still going to drop another 30% this year. It's like, well, guess what? The economists that predicted that the market was going to go down another 20 or 30 in 2023. Sure, it's not necessarily climbing because we're going into multiples again, but it's still getting the number of numbers we're getting in December or November in a sense. But the buyer's mindset now is, okay, the rates are done. I still want to buy a house. Let's go. Right. So,
and I would say the biggest challenge too is that people don't define what an investor is. They are talking about speculators, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I go, are you a speculator or an investor? Because speculators are pre-construction buyers. They're buying a house hoping the market will go up. They're the ones who care what direction the market is heading. But if you buy a property $200K under market value, I don't care what the market is. You got a deal, right? That's period, right? That is, or you got something where the numbers make sense. You can lock into a fixed, debt, and you can project roughly what you're going to make, and it's a profit and it's a good return. Pull the trigger, right? But those are investors, and they're very different from speculators. And I find, a lot of the stock market people are all speculators, right? The growth stock investors, they're buying Tesla because they think the company's going to go up. It's not like a dividend investor. Like I look at myself like a long-term dividend investor being like, or like a trader, like a scalper saying, okay, there was news, the stock is going to go up. I'm going to get in and get out and make a quick profit. But the speculators are the ones that are controlling a lot of the narrative I find in the media of like, oh, I bought this pre-construction home and, now it's appraised lower, or, why is phase 2 selling for cheaper? I'm like, you speculated. You literally just took a gamble and we're hoping your only exit strategy was that does the market go up? So it's just like, that's not what investors do. And even when I explained about how I flip, I did a flip last year when the market was hot. I bought the property off a wholesaler and sold it. I assigned the contract before closing. I made $65,000 without even closing on the property, but it was under market value. And that was my first strategy is, hey, could I assign this for a profit without taking zero risk, right? And that's how investors think as opposed to a speculator. It's, hey, there's a sure thing here and I can just execute this with my knowledge and go forward. I was just speaking to an investor at Durham REI last month who bought a property in Alberta, 32 unit in Alberta, and he negotiated a $2 million vendor take-back mortgage at 0%. So I'm like, it doesn't matter what the interest rates are doing if you can negotiate that or you have the knowledge. Those are the investors. They are not speculators, and they're finding and understand that those deals are out there.
Okay, well, we kind of got cut off there with the dead battery there, but yeah, so we're gonna end the podcast here. So we just want to say thank you very much, Cam, for coming out. I think the people listening are going to see some real value and kind of on the investor side, and what they think is important when the mindset more or less when you're looking at to invest in real estate. So on behalf of myself and Paul, thank you very much. And
happy to be on.
If anybody wants to reach out to maybe look at investing in the States, specifically Florida or anywhere in the States, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. So Instagram, Twitter, at Cam Cassidy on both of them. CamCassidy1@gmail is my email, but I'm sure you can add, that kind of contact details as well. But pretty easy to find. Just Google my name and some socials will pop up or website as well. And appreciate you having me on. And I love sharing and talking about this kind of stuff. And I hope it inspires some people. Hope it motivates some people to invest in real estate and maybe look at it a little different. Yeah.
No, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time and thanks very much.
Yeah,
really appreciate it, Cam. Thanks
guys.
On.